You're watching Public Eye, brought to you by the New Vision Movement. And now, here's your host, Dr. Frank McField.
Good evening and welcome to Public Eye. Yesterday, I was preparing to do a program through the CITN network from the Harkwell. And so I decided that, I was going to try to see if I couldn't relax a little bit during the day. So I had my car being fixed. So I decided to walk from the glass house into town. It was quite a long time since I did that walk, but it was a very hot day yesterday. And I went to Foster's, I picked up some food, and decided to sit there outside to eat my food. So along comes these two young ladies with two children, and they sit down next to me. And one of them says, hello, Mr. McField. The other one looks and said, And she's the one who said, hello, Mr. McField, said, well, don't you know who he is? That's Mr. McField. Oh, she said, oh, yeah, but he looks totally different than on TV. He's handsome, but he doesn't look so on TV. So I just thought that perhaps those of you who might think that I'm on TV so often because I think I'm so handsome, that's not at all the point. The point is that we decided a long time ago that this type of communication with people is essential, because somehow every system must have a heart, it must have a head, it must have some point into which ideas flow in and out. And I've just tried very hard to listen to people as much as I can, and to try to somehow formulate what I think is missing, and to play it over and over again in different ways and different forms, in order to get people to begin to be more cohesive, we would say, more together, so that at the end of the day, you have people working together and not against one another, because unity is very important. But those of us who believe that there should be unity in human society, Caymanian society, but do nothing to make sure that somehow that we are on the same page, or at least that we're striving to get on the same page, So I just feel that the TV media in this country is something that can help us to get to a point of exchanging ideas that will be meaningful. I've taken this opportunity this time to do a program by myself, simply because we did Countdown last night from the Harkwell. And those of you that did not watch the program last night might tune in on Sunday morning and see the program, because it really did bring a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of hopes, a lot of dreams, a lot of retarded aspirations, a lot of hopes for the future, a lot of good suggestions together, because the government really should act as the facilitator of people's dreams and their feelings and their ideas and aspirations. And that's exactly what I do. I cannot be responsible for all that all the members of the government do, but I can certainly report with regards to those issues that I have constitutional responsibility for. I have constitutional responsibility for social development, for the social progress, for the social stability, for the social cohesiveness in our society. And I thought, and I believe that sports play a very, very important role in giving us an opportunity to come together and to celebrate our humanity. And so we had a program last night called Countdown Towards Olympics Goal, Athens 2004. And I believe it was a very successful program. So I just wanted you to know that I'm not on TV all the time simply because I think I'm so handsome. But perhaps my wife believes that, but I'm not so sure that I do. But I am here because I do believe somehow that I have something to share, and I feel blessed, and that is also a very important thing. I believe that the more one shares, the more one tries to achieve that humanity. And the more we put the negatives that people say about us or the negatives that people do to us, the more we put that aside, the more we're capable of putting that aside, the more God is able to reward us by showing us the benefits of His grace. And I definitely feel, especially after the birth of my son, Joshua Verdon McFeel, that I am blessed. Me and Christiana, we are indeed blessed. But that is such a special feeling to have somehow, regardless of what people try to do in the negatives, that if you keep on going and believing in the positives, that you will achieve, you will obtain those things that your heart desire if they are good. And we just like to say again as a family how blessed we feel, how special we feel that we're a part of this Cayman Islands. It is such a blessed place, and that's why we call him Joshua, because it means blessing really from God, that we were able at the end to be able to have a son. And so it even gives me even more of a desire and need to carry out those things which I hope for this country over the years. Because when I came back as a sociologist in 1977, nobody really thought that sociology was important. People thought it meant that I was a socialist. There were those who felt that it was a totally useless profession or occupation. And I believe seriously that the fact that I have had this particular background in social development has given me the opportunity to play a very important role at the moment in terms of redefining our social objectives and our social strategies in the departments of social services, in the Department of Substance Abuse Services, in the prison services, and the other areas that I am responsible for in government. I'm going to be talking a little bit about housing and how we are progressing with regards to affordable housing for low-income families, but I still need to show, in fact, that what we don't want to do is we don't want to come to the point to believe that social development and considerations about social development or about the human condition or the conditions of Caymanian people as we see it socially is not important and should not be important to government, and that people shouldn't study sociology and that people shouldn't study to become social workers and to be involved with the social development of their people, that the only thing that is worthwhile paying attention to is those things that give us individual wealth and individual power. So when I became a sociologist in 1977, when I graduated with a PhD from the Bremen University, it was a risk, of course, that I was taking, especially coming back to a country that at that particular time did not want to hear anything about the fact that we did have and do have and will continue to have poor people, people who need housing, to improve their living condition, to improve their abilities to parent properly and to be responsible and productive members of our community. Housing is a very essential need. It is a need that we cannot overlook in society. So the fact that I took that particular risk, that I invested, that I actually finished my PhD when I was 27 years old, and I had been literally in school all my life in that sense. So I had not had the possibility to accumulate very much for myself. And I started in a very controversial time in the Cayman Islands in 1977 to talk about why we should be interested in our youth, why we should not allow working families with low income not to be able to place their children in preschools, and why it was to governments and the societies in interest to improve what we call the social capital by investing in the development of the people, the children, and not just saying that one can't afford it, so that one should be excluded. So society and government should be thinking overall about what is good for everybody and not what is just good for those that can afford. I got called a socialist basically for that, but as we see today, many people think this way. Many people have come to the understanding that it takes a village to raise a child, and that's all I was saying at that particular time, and that's all I continue to say, is that at the end of the day, we need strong individuals to build strong societies. We need strong societies to build strong individuals, that there is in fact a relationship between the two. You cannot have one without having the other. So we cannot just praise and we cannot just encourage those individuals that are strong enough to survive and develop on their own. We have to also look at those people who we consider to be socially disadvantaged. So in going that way and making those decisions, I made a big investment. So when people criticize me, or if people feel somehow that I'm getting something out of government because I'm being paid a salary, and that is something that I shouldn't have, they have to remember that I was taken up, and I was probably given a ministerial position because of my background in social development, because of my academic qualification, because of the fact that I was an advocate always for those persons that were disadvantaged. I have always been an advocate, and that I had established a very firm history in sound thinking with regards to these particular issues. So it wasn't as if I have not invested part of my life in those considerations, and now if I'm paid a salary, it's simply because I happen to be the person at the moment who is capable of making the deliberations with regard to how we can analyze and improve our social development, and it's a very important part. So that brings me basically to the play Time Longer Than Rope, which I completed in 1979 after I had been dismissed from government services, where I was seconded at that particular time to the National Council of Voluntary Organization. I was dismissed because of statements that I made in the press with regards to preschool education, but also I believe that I was dismissed because I was also attempting to use the council as a advocate of social development, and to use the council as a pressure group to be able to have achieved development in sports and in other areas. This was the reason why I got involved with boxing at that particular time. Dale Ramon, Neon Anglin, and others, and I was a member of the boxing team that went to the first Commonwealth Games that the Cayman Islands participated in 1978, because I understood from the very beginning that youth and sports development went hand in hand. So the fact that we have now a youth and sports department in government is nothing that would be foreign from my thinking, and therefore it fits in with my basic philosophy and policy and politics, because it was something that I recognized all the way back there that was absolutely essential. So when I was dismissed from government, I sat down and I wrote Time Longer Than Rope, which I really believe is not just a drama, but it's about the sociology of the Caribbean family, and it's about the sociology of the Cayman Islands family in particular. And I have tried over a long period of time to get teachers in the school to use Time Longer Than Rope as a text, basically, to begin to talk about some of the domestic issues which we have. So the fact that when I got the opportunity to play an important role in the whole issue of the development of facilities or agencies that would deal with the way that women were being negatively impacted by domestic violence. I don't think is a surprise. I was elected to Executive Council in the 8th of November last year, and I was approached by one of the desk officers responsible for women's affairs issues with regards to the shelter for battered women and their children. And what they showed me there was a plan for over $1 million to develop a facility. And I said, look, I think we can be a little bit more aggressive and practical. And she agreed and said, let's see if we can find a place, go out and see if we can find a place in our community that is near the hospital and the police station, as is being required by this particular agency or by the concept. And they started looking. I was lucky enough to see a place in an area where I was living at the time, and suggested that they took a look at it, and that perhaps we would go ahead and use some funds that we had available for the Orchid House, which was for a little prison for young people that the previous group had decided that they would build. And we decided that we would use some of this money. I went to Executive Council in December last year and got approval to be able to do this. Now, it's happening fast because that home for women in crisis in their homes will come online before the end of the year, and we're looking for a lot of support from the community in it. But I'd just like to say that it wasn't difficult for me to think that way. And I know that there's the TV show that deals with domestic violence, and occasionally I've been asked as minister to make statements about domestic violence, and I've had men come to me and talk about men being abused as well and how they feel. And I'd just like to say that I am not judging anybody, I'm not condemning anybody, I'm just recognizing the fact that something does exist called domestic violence and domestic abuse. And I'm saying that because I say for all of those persons that have read Time Longer Than Rope, or have seen it on TV, and perhaps we need to show Time Longer Than Rope again to show exactly that in 1979 I actually did an analysis of what I consider to be domestic problems in the Cayman Islands and how I felt that these domestic problems were coming about. I used a seaman coming back from sea, conflict of authority, in what people call a matrifocal society, but I was able to demonstrate that. And what happens there is that I am pointing out that it's the children at the end of the day that are the victims of domestic violence and domestic abuse, because when the husband Beatman and Ella have the fight, and when the granny comes in and hits Beatman over the head with the bottle, and when Willie, the son, goes to get the truck to take the father to the hospital. This is in the 50s, of course. The truck runs over Willie. Willie dies. So Willie really is the victim. The child really is the victim of domestic violence. Now, there are some issues there with regards to how the play ends, because the play ends really with an attempt to bring Ella and Beatman back together. Again, where Beatman suffers all the guilt and all the remorse from what he's done, and to somehow we believe and we hope that the nuclear family in this particular situation can survive. But it was definitely given a blow by the domestic violence and the domestic abuse in the situation. So I would say that as a writer, as a sociologist, I recognize the detrimental effects that domestic violence and abuse have had in our society. And I've never come out and really talked about this because, of course, we live in a very funny society, and a lot of times you're doing things and people really don't see what it is that you're doing. a lot of times you're doing things and you don't even see yourself the full scope of what it is that you're doing. But it was something that obviously plagued me, and I would not have been able to have come to the point to be able to write that way about domestic violence and domestic abuse if somehow my life had not been somehow affected by domestic violence and domestic abuse. We live in a small community, and unfortunately, we have come to the point to believe somehow that we're perfect, that our pasts have always been perfect. A lot of people like to remind me of my past, but I think there are a lot of us that need to remember our past, not because our past should condition our future in the sense that it should limit our future, but it should help to make us stronger so that we really go ahead and create that limitless future. So I think that basically what I experienced as a child in the Cayman Islands, in my family setting, was that I experienced situations whereby a lot of men would not call it domestic violence or domestic abuse, because if a woman and a man got in an argument, as in the play, as in, I believe, my life as a child, I saw my mother and my father get into arguments because of him doing things that she did not necessarily approve of. And what happens was, it was an argument. It was an argument or a disagreement, but the point is that that argument and that disagreement was not solved in what we call today conflict resolution. There was no ability there was no anger management. She lacked it, he lacked it. And at the end of the day, what people did is they fought. And what was a fight? Now today we'll just call it a fight, but fight at the end of the day is violence. It's the use of violence. And at the end of the day, when people fight many times, then we call it, when it repeats itself, it's habitual, it's abuse. And it is not easy for people to come out and say, well, we come from grassroots communities where we saw people hitting women, hitting men, and men hitting women, and they're both fighting it up and knocking one another down and kicking one another up. And there were a lot of things that happened, but that was considered to be almost normal. It was normal that the man would win the fight at the end of the day. Sometimes the man would allow himself to be beaten. He wouldn't pay too much attention to it one time or two times, but the third time he might really get angry and he might really hit the woman in a way that would really seriously injure her. Now, kids around saw these things as being normal, and even if we were aggrieved by it as children, we nevertheless, it affected us. It got into our subconscious somehow, and it began to inform also our relationships with women and our relationships with other people. So I don't think that when I wrote Time Longer Than Rope, that as a sociologist that I was unaware of the story that I had to tell, because in fact Time Longer Than Rope was really a play that I extracted from a novel manuscript that I started to work on in 1971 when I was at York University in England. I got up one morning and I started to write the story about what I consider to be my childhood, or some memories of it, some subconscious memories of it. And one of the parts that was already in there, it was Time Longer Than Rope and Downside Up. Downside Up and Time Longer Than Rope have been published as two plays of significance by the Cultural Foundation. But these two plays were already developed in the novel manuscript that I worked with from 1971 until, it was developed into two plays in 1979. It took a long time. It was obsessive. I was obsessive about getting these images, these feelings, these ideas out. It wasn't playwriting in the sense that I was trying to write anything for anybody. It was therapy. It was a good way of working out a lot of the omens that had been somehow built up in me as a child in my environment of Shaden Road. Now, so like I said, if downside up, those of you who remember seeing the downside up, remember seeing the violence in downside up, and all the things that happen that are not pleasant because they're both domestic plays that deal with the domestic realm, and we are looking at the violence and the abuse. And again, the abuse is the abuse of the child, because the abuse of Montero, who we see is not himself, is not all there, simply because of some of the experiences in which he has made. But the fight between Alfred and Mabel and downside up, that fight and the way in which we dramatize that fight was something that scared audiences in different places, and that was one of the reasons a lot of people wanted to disassociate themselves with me and my playwriting, because my playwriting, they say, was not Caymanian. It did not reflect that Caymanian milieu. Now we come back to the point again where I am now the minister responsible for a lot of these issues, and I can talk about my play from that particular perspective. And I would encourage, like I said again, those persons who are teaching in schools and those persons who would like to be able to talk about domestic issues, because the domestic abuse is also the result of a lot of conflicts and contradictions. It's a lot of history that is involved there. And the first question people might ask is whether or not domestic violence, domestic abuse is limited to one class or one race or one nationality. And people will say, no, it's not. But it manifests itself perhaps differently in the different classes and the different races over periods of time. So the manifestation, the ability to cover it up, or the need to cover it up, or the need to hide it. The need to hide it in a middle-class family will probably be greater than the need to hide it in a grassroots family, where if he boxed her down or he boxed her up because she was doing this or that, it was be more seen to be socially appropriate, where it might not be seen to be socially appropriate on a more privileged level, so that the need to cover up is more so. And therefore you will have less knowledge of that happening in those families than you will happen in the grassroots families that I came from. But all in all, I'm happy that our country have come to a point, because of influences from abroad, where people have brought in new ideologies here, and those ideologies have been welcomed by our community, who always will look towards foreign import ideas. But while we have been working with these ideas here, of course they have been rejected. We know that typical situation. Now we've come to the point to realize that domestic violence affects all of us. It has affected many of us, and we don't have to necessarily punish ourselves, because we are a part of a culture that has been ongoing, and we did not determine all the social factors that would influence us and build our character and our behavior. What we become masters of is our condition. When we become aware of the fact of exactly what it is that we're doing that is wrong, then it's the time to admit it and to change. But the fact that we might have done wrong or will do wrong is not something to condemn yourself for, because you were not the person who grew you. You did not grow yourself. You did not provide the social factors that would influence your growth. So I'm not going to hold myself responsible for my past. I'm not going to hold myself responsible for all the social factors that informed my character, but I will hold myself responsible if I don't do anything to realize that all of these conditions, once I become aware of them, can be in control of them. So let us learn to see that the domestic violence issue, the domestic abuse issue in this country is not just a women's issue. It's not just something that is being pushed forward by women who don't care about men, and by women who want to somehow do negative things, want to do what they want to do, and this and that. The domestic violence issue is an issue that affects young people. It affected you as a man if you feel that it's not important. It might have affected you when you were a child. And we might have already been conditioned by that to think this way. So let us be aware of the fact that we can change the way we feel about domestic violence and domestic abuse. I am therefore very encouraged by the work that NACADA, the National Committee Against Domestic Violence, has been involved in doing it, and all the business and professional women's clubs contributions and the other contributions of the service clubs and others, the police involvement, and this attempt by our ministry and by the Women's Resource Center to provide some kind of understanding to the frontline officers like the police and immigrations and those persons as to what exactly is domestic violence. Because if you go into a house, you know, and people are having a quarrel, a fight, it's their business. They say, in my business, you don't come into my business. This is my yard, this is my house, this is my domestic realm. I'm king in my castle. But no, it don't go so no more. Because basically whatever it is, it involves another individual whose rights are not being respected, whose humanity is not being respected. And society cannot allow the domestic realm or any other realm to disregard the public recognition and acceptance that people should have basic human rights, that humanity should prevail, that people should, regardless of gender, regardless of age, regardless of sex, be treated in a humanistic manner. I mean, that is the basis of sociology. The basis of sociology is to find out if man is always man, and I say man, meaning man, women. If humanity is striving to become more human, to become more good, what is it that really prevents us from being able to achieve our desires of a cohesive society? What really prevents us from being able to reach this New Jerusalem? What is it that causes us? Is it because we are by nature sinful and bad, or is it because we make mistakes, we cover these mistakes up, and these mistakes begin to pretend at particular times to be us? And so sociology is a discipline of inquiring into human behavior, inquiring into human institutions, and the way in which they produce values and norms, and the way in which these then inform our behavior on a day-to-day level, and so forth and so on. So I'm really right there with the development with regards to the domestic violence issue. As you can see, I understand the issue, and I am not in coming to the public and reading statements with regards to Focus and saying that people should watch Focus. I'm not saying that Frank McField was a person who never hit a woman. I'm not saying that Frank McField was a person who never hit his sister. I'm not saying that Frank McField was a person who never fought. I'm saying that Frank McField basically came from a social, cultural situation where solving problems through the use of violence was the norm. And that particular way of looking at things was not strange, because the society overall believes that violence is the way that we should solve problems. Or we have to look at the way in which people are ready to go to war without any question or hesitation. All we have to do is look at what we glorify, all the rude boys and the bad boys and the gangster boys and the other things, to understand that the belief that violence can solve a problem on a domestic level is not out of sync with the general society. So that is one of the reasons too, when we're talking about domestic violence, we need to be talking about violence in the society as a whole. We cannot really, and we do not attempt to remove domestic violence from the rest of the violence in the society, because in saying that there's domestic violence in our society, in saying that there's domestic abuse in our society, means that there's other general violence and belief in abuse in our society. And we see that in the way we talk about people, because we talk about domestic violence and it could be also psychological. But look, when you're talking where we're saying horrible things about people, that's a form of abuse. A lot of politicians are being abused And a lot of us in the United Democratic Party are being abused simply because of the nasty, rotten things that certain people are saying. And I'm not talking about things that they can say on open media. I'm talking about things that cowards have said. I'm talking about letters that they've written us. I'm talking about dirty postcards that they've sent to us. I'm talking about nasty, dirty things that people have tried to say about my family and my situation. That is abuse. Society is abusive. That is why certain classes of people, because they do not have the understanding at a particular time, begin to think that when they abuse one another, that it's okay, because that's what the norms are. I have always accepted and loved the fact that of where I come from. I have always been proud of the experiences that God have given me, that life have provided me with, because it gives me the opportunity to be a teacher, to teach people with regards to what it is that they're experiencing, because I know what it is, because I know I come from there. There are very few social problems that I can't talk about from a personal perspective. And therefore, it not only gives me an intellectual understanding, it gives me a deep personal and emotional understanding and affinity with these particular issues. And so I come to the question of housing. How are we going to have domestic violence, especially in the class of people that I am talking about always, that I try to represent as much as possible, the grassroots people, if they are living in conditions that are so small, conditions that are so overcrowded, because they have to share. When we're talking about a man and a woman living in a one-bedroom home with 4 children, and sharing a house with other members or other siblings and with parents, and where the conflict of authority becomes exactly that we experience in Time Longer Than Rope and Downside Up, where somebody's telling a child to do this and the other one say, no, you shut up, let him do that, and you better keep out of my business, and where the child becomes totally confused with regards to structure and regulations. And when we talk about the lack of structure in a child's life, how can there be structure in a child's life when the basic condition, the home, the domestic infrastructure is not there for structure to unfold in the first place? We talk about the fact that the child is not being given the opportunity to do their homework or to be encouraged by their parent. What if the parent is out there working 2 jobs just to be able to pay not the mortgage, but the rent, just to keep surviving? How will the parent be able to play an active role in being a good parent? If parenting is so important to society, if parenting is so important to the preservation of the social capital in society, without which we could not have successful financial capital, if parenting is so important, why does society demote parenting to the point where if the parent cannot achieve in the private sector by earning a wage that is a livable wage, that the society does nothing, the government do nothing to make sure that somehow that the parent is still able to exist in a livable condition with their children? Because certainly if they are not in a livable condition, that we will be helping to foster the development of social problems, social conflicts, and violence. So if we're trying to demote domestic violence, but we're promoting violence simply because we are taking away the conditions which are necessary for decent Christian living, and only recognizing but not doing anything about the negative conditions that are there that will act against decent Christian living, then we are not going to be able to minimize domestic violence or violence in the society as a whole. So we understand that the establishment of a crisis center is only part of a solution to the general problem of domestic violence, abuse, and violence in the society as a whole. So we have to be able to provide people with affordable housing. Now we in our ministry, the Ministry for Community Affairs, Women's Affairs, Youth and Sports, have been actively involved in defining a scheme that will be able to deal with low-income persons. And we really are at the point where we have cleared a piece of land next to Cox Lumber, and we have cleared a piece of land in West Bay, and we will begin very shortly to fill the land. We have an agreement with a factory in Italy that produces a pre-engineered material. Now, we prefer to use the word pre-engineered because the word prefab has been discredited in Cayman when it comes to building homes. Of course, you get your prefab when it comes to building offices and warehouses and all of that. You have your prefab or pre-engineered material there because people can make a profit, and that's okay. But it was discredited when we come to the point of providing homes for people. We have to rehabilitate this whole thing because we have to also understand that materials that are used for housing, that materials that are used for constructing buildings have always changed through the ages. It's not been consistently one material that's been used by any society over a long period of time. They have always changed in terms of what material they use at that particular time, and science and scientific and technological innovation and architectural designs have played a very important role in this, and also the question of economy and affordability. So what is being designed in Italy, and we have seen that commercial buildings are built out of this as well, is a type of aluminum on the outside with a very tightly factory compressed foam on the inside. So there would be on one side aluminum, on the other side aluminum, foam in the inside, tightly compressed to create a structural integrity for the material so that you don't need all the uprights and the different types of things. And that this is then put together with different bolts which are then covered through a particular kind of finishing. The floors are tile floors, and the tiles are beautiful tiles. The houses are higher ceiling. Now, we looked at the possibility of using cement because we looked at the Matalons project in Jamaica, and we were impressed by it. But at the same time, we felt that it would be a little hot because the cement, the use of cement, also to move the panels around would also cost quite a bit of money because you would have to be using cranes because of them being so heavy and everything like that. This material is pre-engineered. It is more scientifically derived. The projects there in Jamaica is science from 40, 50 years ago, and we're dealing with modern science and technology. We have to be at this particular point producing materials that are much more durable. We would be able to get a 20-year guarantee on this material because it's also made to prevent it from being affected by severe assault and so forth and so on. And we were just negotiating with regards to the hurricane standard, and we got it up to a very good standard at the moment that is satisfactory to us, and therefore we will go ahead in signing a contract within the next week or so. Now, this is important because I'm saying that we went from wattle and daub to maybe those of us who remember having thatch houses. I mean, it was not just the roof that was thatched, but also the whole house was thatched, or the wattle and daub. So people had lumber, used lumber. The bricks, the block thing is just something that came with National Bulk Carriers, Southwell back in the 50s. Is something that's really popular material, and a lot of people like the cement look. And we're not discouraging people from later on, if they want to go and get the cement look, to go and get the cement look. But I think what we're trying to say is that the government interest is not in trying to cater to people's egos or high expectations. The government's duty is to try to create livable conditions that will make good Christian living possible, that will give people the opportunity to manage and raise their families in ways that is consistent with the general values and norms of the society as a whole. We want to therefore attack social breakdown. We want to therefore attack youth violence and domestic violence, which are two things that are, of course, interrelated, by creating livable spaces for people to begin to rehabilitate themselves in regards to their domestic and community relationships. So housing is important. So I have to stress that, and I've been stressing that to my government, and my government really believes that it is true that housing is important. But I just don't take a point to my government, I take a point to the people, because I believe that the people are very important in supporting me in my drive to get this, and in giving my government the confidence that it will be rewarded should it achieve these particular programs and directions, because everybody works that way. Everybody is looking for some kind of reward for what it is that they do, and that is not bad. Self-interest is not bad as long as it's managed within means. So the mere fact that we have people who are saying, yeah, we support government housing policies as they are being developed by the Ministry of Community Services, Youth and Sports. We support that general intervention that government is contemplating into the low-income communities, because we realize that only if government intervenes can we preserve that social capital that Cayman has been so proud of, that social capital that it creates the foundation for economic stability and progress in the Cayman Islands, and political stability and progress in the Cayman Islands. So in doing so, we have basically said, look, let us rethink the whole use of materials. Let us not sit and say, oh, I don't want to live in that because of this and that. I don't want to do that because of this. Let us go and be reasonable. Let us begin to live according to what it is that we can afford. Let us build for people according to what they can afford. So if we're going to build for people according to what they can afford, we have to be careful about how we use land. Not just materials, but land. We have to be careful about how we use labor, because if we don't use labor and land efficiently and economically, then we will destroy the savings that we are making on the purchasing of the material. And at the end of the day, although we have saved on by purchasing pre-engineered material, we're now gone and we used it up in the way in which we use land and labor. One of the situations is that I believe, for instance, in the Georgetown Court area, that I like to see, and also in West Bay, the development of some townhouses, the development of nicely designed townhouses where they all come and face into the court, and into like a courtyard where people have a center and a focus for their children to be seen while they're playing, the smaller ones at least, and where the community comes to see itself through its door. Because we cannot remodel these communities as separate individual selfish communities. We have to remodel these communities as extended family communities and take advantage of that extended family that we are losing, that we've lost, and try to rebuild all of the positive aspects of the extended family and give the extended family the kind of physical space that it really needs to actually function, because now the extended family is being choked in these very small homes where siblings remain with their parents, where single mothers have no choice but to remain in the family home, several of them, and therefore destroying through this ongoing conflict because of the lack of space. So we can give the extended family a new possibility by the design of affordable low-income houses in the Cayman Islands. I think automobile roads shouldn't play an important part, because again, it's putting roads there, it's wasting lands for cars when you could put the land in such a way that it would be for people. So if we begin to put into, for instance, in West Bay, where we have 10 acres of land, if we begin to put roads in there and everybody have their parking space and all that sort of thing, is using all this space for cars, low-income people cannot afford that. They should not be affording that, because there are more things that are important to low-income people. For instance, the comfort of being able to work for a living wage or a minimum wage and not have to exhaust yourself, because at the end of the day, you know you have shelter and food for your kids, and that you know that you have insurance to be able to provide your child and with medical care, is a great accomplishment. Rather than saying that what we are going to do is to provoke people to have to achieve a car simply because we put a parking lot in front of their home, because we put roads in there. The temptation of people getting involved with loans rather than being concentrating on paying their mortgages and building capital and building up assets in those homes that they own. So I don't believe, and this is one of the reasons why the government went and changed the lot size, for instance, recently, in order for us to be able to begin the development with our low-income homes. I believe that we still cannot use that amount of land for homes, and I do believe that when we talk about homes, that we need to talk also about apartment homes, condominium homes, because it's really funny that the condominium concept did not come from the rich, but the condominium concept is a concept now that is dominated by the rich. You got the Ritz-Carlton building condominiums. They're willing to go up to 7 stories, and these people are willing to live in this limited land, because you know why? Because land is so important. Land is so expensive. So the rich cannot afford each to have their single condominium. But the poor, there are those people who advocate that the poor should have, although land is expensive or no cheaper for the poor should all have single lots that a lot of people neglect anyway, because they don't grow anything on it anymore. The land is not really used anymore for people to be able to produce subsistent goods. The land is ignored to a lot of extent. So why is there then the need to have these lots of land for these houses? No. So we are trying to persuade people to be able to adjust themselves to the condominium concept, and that the social life will be organized in such a way, because there we have beat policemen, we have community development officers, we have coaches, we have youth officers that would be attached to these particular areas to make sure that we're not taking for granted the fact that social cohesion will exist and be maintained, but that we are willing to not just take it mechanically or naturally, but we are also, as sociologists and social planners, planning for it to happen by intervention and by using preventative methods to achieve those particular social goals that we consider to be consistent with good Christian living. So we have the ideas there. There are persons in the private sector that now believe somehow that we should have come to them, or we should be saying something to them. But part of the reason why my ministry intervened with the housing, is because we realized that we have been waiting for this for 30 years, and nobody have achieved it. So by going directly to the producers of the material that will be used, we have cut out the middleman. We have saved the low-income persons some money. And therefore also, by using government land, we have provided the possibility for us to be able to add another element that is necessary for the development. And now what we want to make sure is that we do not use that land in such a way as to not be able, at the end of the day, to be able to accommodate as many persons with low incomes as possible. There are so many people out there that are asking, when can they begin to sign up? How can they get more information? I say you'll have to stay put until we begin to make the big announcement as to how we are going to going to allocate these houses to low income. But the first phases will be for people with low income, not for people with no income. No income persons will be people that we will have to deal with as we go along later on. But we're interested definitely in being able to bring housing to people at a cost that is affordable. When we say affordable, we mean below $500 per month. And we have been looking at 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms possibilities. But I think all in all, people have to be able to assist government in getting out of this housing crisis. We have over 6,225 of our 10,630 people, K-minors in the workforce, who are making much below $2,000 per month. And when we say $2,000 per month, a lot of people are only making $1,000 or $1,200 per month. And what can they afford? And the question is, if the people can't afford, then you know the government can't afford, because the government is only as rich as its people, because the government's wealth comes from the people, since the government really is the people. So at this particular time, when we're going through all of the financial stresses and strains that we're going through, we have tackled one of the most important social issues in our country, domestic violence and housing, which is somehow connected with domestic violence in low-income families at least. So we have not forgotten that, and we would just encourage you to pray for the government. There was somebody in particular who asked me, they said they pray for the government, but they would like me to tell them something specific to pray for, and that person know who she is, and I said to her, I said, pray for housing, pray for housing, pray for housing, and it looks like it's there. So let's get a bit more prayer for housing. Pray for housing for the people. Even if you don't like a lot of us and you don't think a lot of us are handsome, pray for housing for the people. Pray for things for the people. Pray for the people. And at the end of the day, you know what? It will all be there. Use Cayman Christian faith to create a time of optimism. Even when times are hard, you can make things, because my brother says, it is not the income, it is the outcome. It is not what you have, but what you make of what you have, not just as individuals, but as a country. Let us use these times to make those prophecies come through. Thank you for listening to me, and good night from Public Eye.
Public Eye has been brought to you by the New Vision Movement. You're watching Public Eye, brought to you by the New Vision Movement. And now, here's your host, Dr. Frank McField.
Good evening, and welcome to Public Eye. This evening I have as my guests Mr. Eddington Powell and Ms. Joanna Martinez. Both are members of the United Democratic Party in the District of East End. And I decided to do this show really after I was invited to the District of East End by Mr. Eddington Powell and Ms. Martinez to take a look, a serious, honest look at some of the social issues in that district. And we visited many homes in East End, basically homes that they had already decided that somehow needed some type of attention from government. And I was very surprised with what I found. And being a bit of an East Ender myself, I seem to have over the years kept very much to the sides of the roads and not really venturing to go further inland to visit my relatives to see really basically what the conditions were in the homes, because one is so often misled by what one sees in people who are making their way out. You know, you meet a person on you know, in town, or you meet a person at home, not their home, but perhaps at your home, and you just get the general impression somehow that things are okay, but what you don't see are some of the living conditions that people exist in the district of East End. Now the problem really is that when we start talking about problems, whether or not they be drug problems or whatever kinds, marital problems, domestic abuse issues, unless we can admit and accept the fact that problems do exist, there can be no solutions to these problems. So we have to come to a point where we have some type of honest dialogue with regard to the issues and the causes of the issues. And so I would just like to say to you, Mr. Edenton Powell and Joanna, that I really appreciate, as Minister responsible for community services, including the social services, of course, that I'm very, very thankful that you were able to get me to that particular point where I could experience some of these issues on a personal as well as professional level.
And Dr. Frank, I would like to thank you first of all for coming to the district. I'd also like to say it here that I think that the country is fortunate to have you right now as minister for this area, because I believe that you are uniquely qualified to analyze these situations and to deal with these problems, to come up with the kind of innovative, creative solutions that we need for these problems, not only in East End, but across the country. But of course, I'm particularly concerned about East End and what has happened to the district, say, over the last 25 years. And I would just take a second to just recap where for the last 25 years, we've had a lot of physical development in the district in terms of government projects and building. But what has been lacking is the attention to the social and human aspects of the district, and that's what happened over the last 25 years.
Yeah, Joanna, you...
Yeah, I mean, I also want to say thank you for taking your time and coming to the district. It was on very short notice, but yet you agreed to come with us, that we could go around, visit various people in their homes to see exactly what the living conditions and situations are that people are going through in East End. By you coming there, we hope that now we've got the attention of your attention and the attention of social services, that these people can get some kind of help, that they can improve their living conditions and like I said, their situations. One would have to come out and actually see to believe some of the things that we witnessed as we visited. These things were brought to our attention because we are members of the UDP Committee for East End, and as we were asking members of the community, what are the issues, what are the most pressing things that should be addressed at this time, and that was one of the first things that were brought to our attention, the social issues and living conditions that people are facing. Some people just need help for a very short term because they don't have any jobs at this time, so we're not talking about a huge expenditure for government. We're just talking about 1 to 2 months until people get another job. In some situations we have people who are awaiting medical care, but yet they forego medical care because they don't have any income whatsoever. And I think we have a really serious issue that someone would put their health in jeopardy rather than turning to someone and say, well, lend me $5 that I can go to the clinic to get a dressing on this cut or something like that. So yeah, I mean, again, thanks for coming out and looking to see exactly what we're facing there, that we can get some solutions.
Well, you know, the interesting thing also is that when you are minister responsible for social services, you can do certain things that you couldn't do if you weren't. I mean, when we are in the election mode, we're always talking about what we would do if elected. And I'm in a unique position in that I can do something. I don't have to say what I would do. So what I talk about is what I'm doing and what I'm going to be doing the next day, so that we have goals that are definable and that are measurable, and so it is important for us when we see issues, social issues like this, that we focus in on them and begin to give them the kind of attention. But I like to, politics is also an important part of this situation. The fact is that you all are members of the United Democratic Party, and you approached me because the relationship, obviously, that I have with the two of you is completely different than the relationship I have with the representative for the District of East End, because the representative for the District of East End, he sees me as his opposite. He sees my government and he sees my position as something that should be as temporary as possible. So he has to obviously concentrate on trying to remove me and my government from office, rather than to assist me in solving the problems in his district, because if I was assisted in solving the problems in his district, it might also assist me in maintaining my position in office as well. So when we come into the party system, we have those types of issues already.
And Dr. Frank, that's really unfortunate that the representative can't see the efficacy of working with you to deal with these problems, because you see, the people we are talking about are people who that I grew up with in many cases, who got up every day and went to work. These people are hard-working, industrious people. Easterners have been known for hard-working industrious people, but they are in an age group, particularly that 55 upward, where they work for many years, year after year, but because of age, because of sickness, and there's no social net, that once there's a loss of income, then these people get into trouble, and that there's nobody there, including, as you just alluded to, where the representative or whomever is not up there canvassing the district, trying to identify these people and to bring these issues to the surface, and these people are now suffering because of that.
Well, Joanna?
Yeah, I mean, we want to make sure that these people are definitely looked after, and like Edenton said, because of the lack of involvement of the member that we have elected at this time, these issues cannot be addressed from that avenue. Therefore, that's how we've become involved, to make sure that these issues get addressed. We can't just leave people along the way and assume that someone else is going to address the issue. We see the issues and we want the issues addressed now, so we're going to take control of the situation and make sure that we get some help out there to those people.
Well, it also shows us what a district branch can do from the point of view of the United Democratic Party. That you all are in government in that sense, because you are directly connected with the function in government. So when it comes to the distribution of resources, you all have a say in how the party approaches the government to distribute resources. So it goes to show that because the United Democratic Party does not have a representative elected at this particular point in the District of East End, it doesn't mean that the East Enders won't be receiving their fair share, because you all, as members of the United Democratic Party, negotiate on behalf of the East Enders to make sure that the East Enders get their fair share. Now, there were people who said to me, well, we hope that you're not going to share East End out with regards to houses and other policies. And I've already discussed with you all with regards to the housing policy, how we intend to work along with the United Democratic Party in East End to make sure that East Enders receive their fair share. Now, we know that we can't all get into the situation at one time, but within the period of time that we have defined for the development of houses, definitely East End will receive its positive benefits. Now, one of the real issues that I saw in East End and walk around housing issues, and obviously you know you might be at a situation, because right now what we're looking at is we're looking at low income houses for people with incomes, but obviously we have serious questions also about people without incomes that are some type of responsibility of the state, that need some type of safety net, because once the housing conditions deteriorate to the extent that I saw them there, then you're going to have all kind of social and health issues as well. Those issues are inevitable. The state can have a laissez-faire approach to social problems and say, let people solve their own problems. Let people, make their own money. Let people acquire their own things. But the state knows that it still has a responsibility to maintain a particular standard. And we have to intervene when we believe that human existence is really being somehow not assisted to the point where people can have a particular standard of living. So the whole concept of politics and the representative for the District of East End, and people assuming that because he's in opposition to the government, he wants to get rid of the government, he wants to criticize the policies of the government, that would mean that somehow the East End will be negatively impacted by the United Democratic Party's policy. But our policy is a result of the input which the United Democratic Party branch in the District of East End has into the general.
It shows a certain level of immaturity on the representative part, and the lack of a broader vision for East End. Because at some point we can have political differences, but we need to work for the good of the district and to sweep aside those issues for some time as we work to improve those issues. Now, you're quite right. The issues in East End are very multifaceted. Housing is one of them. Some kind of minimum income for people is one of them. Educational standards are one of them. Drugs is one of them. But it is such a multifaceted issue that we need to work together. And the fact that we can't bring that kind of political focus on the issue is really unfortunate, and that's why I appreciate it so much when you visited the district, where I think your presence there was able to bring a certain amount of focus on East End and on the issue, because you mentioned one thing which I think is very important. We are negotiating for East End, we are advocating for East End, because we understand that East End needs to get its fair resources.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we should also mention is that the problems in East End are very unique, because to the point that if you look at the population of East End compared to the other districts, our population is much smaller, but the social issues that we're talking about here are on a much larger scale percentage-wise. So I think the people in East End have definitely been left out for a very long time, and we need to bring that to an end and make sure that there are some solutions there, innovative solutions that we can solve the issues that we have. Another thing that you mentioned was the house, and like you said, the older people we find are the ones with the less or the lower standard of housing. There, we need to come up with an innovative solution there, even though I know the housing solution at this time is for those that have a salary, they have an income and they're in the bracket of 1,000 to 2,000 salary bracket. But I think this gives us an opportunity that we can home in on, that we can help people in this situation that are over 50 and 55 that have a substandard living situation.
That's one reason I think why we would like to be at some particular point talking about a housing trust, which would really own housing stock that would then be available to persons with no incomes, especially people who are at that age, because then once they have deceased, then those houses would then fall back to the trust. They would not be something that would be passed on. We recognize also we have quite a few seamen, for instance, that are 55 and 60 and do not have a house, and they will probably not qualify at the bank. So we have other issues as we go along in terms of the development of our housing strategy that we will have to take into account that will impact people who have incomes but will not qualify, and people who don't have incomes. So all of these issues have to of course be borne in mind. And the United Democratic Party's philosophy with regards to social benefit is one that believes that the people should benefit, because if the people benefit, the country benefits. The social capital is improved. It is not degraded to the point where it begins to negatively impact on the physical capital. Because unless the environments remain a safe environment for people to do business, then you cannot continue to prosper the way we're prospering from our financial centers.
And in East End, the problem is particularly acute, because what you have a combination where for a variety of reasons, a lot of young professional people have migrated from the district. So there's a huge East End diaspora, as I call it, who's living outside of the district. And if I were to believe the information, the statistics that I heard from the Department of Social Services, where the average income, and this is the average, there are a lot of people that fall below this average, is $1,500 a month, or $1,500 to $1,800 a month. It shows you that the national income, the per capita income in East End is substantially below the national level, which is contributing to all these social problems. And what we have to do is to break this cycle. One generation should do better than the next. And if we're not doing that, there are serious implications, not only for East End, but for the entire country.
Yeah. But you all are also members of the Quincentennial Celebration District Committee as well. So.
Yes. And we hope to use the Quincentennial as a catalyst to raise the whole consciousness of the people, especially the younger generation, where they can look to certain icons, Miss Phoebe, Mr. Will Jackson, and some of those that have deceased, like Mr. Lincoln Borden. These were great men and women, not only in the district, but Mr. Watler, who used to be one of the former assistant commissioners. These are great people that came up from East End, but they've lost that kind of a role model in East End, and we through the Quincentennial, bring it back.
Yeah.
The other thing, if I can just add in here, on the 5th of October, we plan to have the launching of our Quincentennial Committee in East End. And this is a perfect occasion, I think, that we can invite the general public to come out and support us. There at that evening, the highlight will be the conferring of the title National Honorary Cultural Ambassador to Mr. Will Jackson, who, in all rights is a great historian and a very well-respected member of our community. So please come out and support us.
Good. And I guess you all are also involved with the park, because the government is involved with the DART Foundation and the building of or the creation of parks in Grand Cayman, and East End is one of the districts, of course, where we will create a park.
We are very, very excited about the possibility of the park coming to East End, which should be very in line with the Scholars Park in West Bay.
Yeah, well, so there are quite a few things, I mean, in terms of government and government's partners that are out there in the private sector working towards growing communities.
Yes.
Because I think that is a good term, growing communities.
Yes, that's right.
And I think that's what the DART Foundation uses as a logo.
Yes.
That they're growing communities in terms of the park extension programs or the park development programs. We of course have a park in Georgetown that we will be also working on, that will come online perhaps by April next year, and that's where we used to call English Point, I think they used to call it, where all the English people, Portuguese Point,
Yeah.
where the Commissioner of Police and the judges and people like that, Attorney General, lived in the past. We have now emancipated that area for a park for the people of the Cayman Islands. And so there are a lot of exciting things that are happening with the DART Foundation and their willingness to contribute, because they had started with the idea that they would spend $1 million in the creation of parks for Grand Cayman, but it looks like it's going to be over $2 million by the time they're finished.
I think that's a fine example, Dr. Frank, of the kind of corporate citizen and the kind of partnership with government, the community, and corporations that we need in Cayman. I think a lot of other corporations should look at what DART is doing, the DART Foundation is doing, the DART Corporation is doing, and emulate that.
Yeah. Well, it's also important, I guess, people say, well, that's a little bit of a bribe in you, right? Somebody's giving you something because you know that they want something, but that's what life is all about. Life is all about exchange. That is the basis for life. You give something to get something. That is the rule. There are too many people who believe that they should get something and not give anything. And I always believe that whatever little you have to share, at the end of the day, if somebody gives you something, you should turn around and give them something back. But like I said, it's just how charitable organization works, philanthropy, and it's like the belief that somehow that you get something. So if you go back even to the Bible, and you go back into the year of Jubilee, you go back into Moses and that whole creation, is that there comes a point when you give back to the community. Because if you don't give back, you can't receive. So giving and receiving is something that rich people understand. Because we had the notion that sometimes people are rich because it has to do something with their own spirituality.
Dr. Frank, if I might, I about a month or so ago, Sir Howard Cook was down here, the Governor General of Jamaica, and he was speaking to the Men's Fellowship and of the United Church. And he would talk about the community that he grew up in. It was a community that was named Goodwill. It was founded by missionaries for slaves after emancipation. And so his grandfather, probably a slave, but he talked about how that community molded him and was able to make him become what he become. And that's what John and I are saying, that the standard we grew up in made us what we are, and we are now trying to contribute back to that district. And I would invite all of these standards who have gone on, have done very well, and others to come back and help us, help the district, because the district need help, and that's giving back.
So we don't just have to depend upon government. We can take what the philanthropist really shows us is that you get and you give.
And this is a very, there's a cycle there. If we can get the businesses and we can get the professionals coming back and helping us out in East End, then the district as a whole will be much better. You'll get a lot of the social issues that we have right now going away. There'll be less crime because people will be more educated, people will be more involved, there'll be more, socializing amongst the people, that things will be more in harmony. So we need as much help as we can get. So anyone that is interested can contact myself, or they can contact Edenton and definitely get involved within the district.
Yeah. Well, we have about actually 5 minutes of this segment left, and I'd just like to again say that it's difficult for me sometime to decide exactly how I can talk about the social issues in East End. But I think that I've been able to gain an understanding that also needs to be shared with other people that will have a say in how the resources are distributed. Because politics ultimately is about the distribution of resources that belong to the community. So the nation's resources that are collected are then distributed. And so it's important that people realize that government decides how these resources are distributed. So with regards to East End serious problems at the moment, I would suggest that what the elected member for East End needs to concentrate a bit on is not in building a party and in creating membership for a party, but in building the district or rebuilding the districts. And we as a government are willing to cooperate with whoever it is that shows us that they're interested and lead us to the issues so that we can then bring the resources that we have to bear on it. And what we're planning on doing for East End is that we're planning on getting a team of people together that can visit the district in order to do the assessments as soon as possible of a lot of these issues. And I will not rest until the Social Service Department is directed in that particular position so that some alleviation of the issue becomes possible.
I want to thank you again, Dr. Frank. I mean, that initiative I know is a direct result of your recent visit to the district. I want to, on behalf of the UDP in East End, Committee East End, and for the District of East End, Dr. Frank, I'd like to thank you very much.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Again, thanks for all that you've done for us thus far, and we look forward to working with you on other major projects that we have in the pipeline. You mentioned the housing, the park, and whatever else comes up that we can help the people of East End.
Okay. Well, this is basically summing up for this particular segment of Public Eye. I will return and do some comments about the political arena as I see it at the moment. We'll return in just a moment.
The finest European kitchen and tableware exclusively at Ambiance, Georgetown.
Well, welcome back to the second half of the show. And right now I'll just speak briefly about some of the issues that come to mind. And first thing that come to mind is, you hear people saying, well, they don't see Frank McField anymore. And I think that's probably a similar reaction to my wife. My wife is saying, we don't see him that much anymore, simply because it really is consuming the job of being a minister in the Cayman Islands government and dealing with so many issues that involve so many people. It's been a great experience so far to be able to do things that I've always wanted to do, but it does consume your time. And if you were to employ someone and you saw that person all the time, that person being able to speak to you on a personal level all the time, then you would know that that person had no work to do. And if the person had work to do, the person was not doing the work. So if a person is working, it is quite obvious that you'll see that person less than you did before. And that is the case. It's not because I care less for people. It's not because I value socialization less. I love to stand on the block and, shoot the breeze and just relax and talk things, And it is just sometimes impossible. Time management is something that becomes very important to managers. You have to make sure that you manage your time in such a way that you accomplish your objectives, because at the end of the day, people will also judge me for what I've been able to accomplish. And this might be the only opportunity that I'll ever have to impact people positively that I've wanted to impact by the way we organize our social policies. So I have to take advantage of the opportunity to help as many people as I can by restructuring the policies and the delivery of services in the ministry that I'm responsible for. We've spent quite a bit of time with the prison, and I can see the progress there. We have a lot of issues, nevertheless, there that we need to take care of. But I still try to come on the TV program each month and speak to people quite openly and honestly about how I feel about things and issues that I really believe that we need to be addressing. I'm not stuck and fixated on one issue like referendum and constitution. I know that there are other issues in the society. I just visited East End, saw that there are more issues there than referendum and constitution. There's real poverty. There is real social underdevelopment. There are real drug problems. There are real teenage issues with regards to kids leaving school at a very early age simply because maybe the social value that value education are no longer as strong as they used to be in days gone by. Or maybe they're not as strong because the class of people who valued education have become successful and moved out of the district. But there are certainly more issues in the District of East End than the referendum and the Constitution and the creation of a movement to remove us from government. Now, I say all of this because I think that when I have these monthly public shows, I discuss issues that have to do with politics, issues that have to do with basically the job. And so if people feel that they're not hearing from me, what they need to do is to turn on their TV each month, the second Thursday each month at 8 o'clock. It interrupts days of our lives, and there are a few people who I understand are also upset because once a month I upset the days of their lives by not allowing them to watch their TV program for that hour. But if people watch the TV, if they pay attention, they know that I'm paying attention to what's going on and that I continue to value talking with them. And so it's just an easier way today because if you don't take advantage of the technology which is available, then you'll be not really using the full potentials that you have available to you in the society. So I'd just like to say that. And I know that there are people out there who are going around unelecting me at the moment because the People's Progressive Movement have decided that I should not retain my seat in the District of Georgetown. Now, we have not come to the point of an election yet. We have not come to the point of even deciding what I have done good or no good, because we're not at that particular point where people can actually judge my performance as a minister. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. There are people who I believe are saying to me, Frank, I think that you're on the right track with a few things. You're innovative, you're creative, you bring in a few different approaches to the whole issues at this time, and we really appreciate that. But there are those people who feel that they deserve to have my seat. And there are those people who are promising this seat that I have, not the seat as minister, but the seat in the District of Georgetown, at least representing the grassroots people. They are persons that believe that they control the psychic, the minds of the grassroots people so much that they can already promise that seat to another person who seems to have thought that my seat is a seat that belonged to them. Now, we have party politics, and so we have to realize that there are people out there who will not support me. Regardless of what I do, they will criticize. Regardless of what I do, they will find reasons why you should get rid of me in 2004, which I must say is 2 years from now. Quite a bit of time left. There are quite a few things that can happen. Some of us might not even be alive in 2 years from now. But we're planning these plans because basically the opposition have no other thoughts in their mind but 2004. We have to have thoughts in our mind that have to do about day-to-day running of the country. We have to think about what's happening in sports. We have to think about what's happening with the elderly. We have to think about all those things on a day-to-day level because we're responsible for the management of this country. They are responsible only to themselves. They are responsible only with regards to removing us. And that's the reason why they brought over, when they did their convention or the introduction ceremony, introducing or inducting their members to the party, they brought over somebody from Barbados who's also in opposition. And this was the second time that the gentleman has come here to support them and to speak on their platforms. They also brought someone from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Prime Minister, who everyone knows would be considered to be a radical. I get labeled as being a radical, but I had no way have I been involved in the issues that he's been involved, because I heard that he was even asked to leave Jamaica at a particular time simply because of his radical conduct. Now those are the types of people that the People's Progressive Movement are bringing into the country to somehow impress you, and creating this fanfare to begin to get you involved with the rituals that they're creating, making you believe somehow that the only thing you need to think about is 2004 when you can remove this government. You need to think about today. You need to think about how you might benefit, or how somebody in your family or somebody that you know will benefit from our housing program. You need to be thinking about how someone you know, or how you might benefit from the poor relief program that we have and that we have been increasing money for. You need to find out whether or not you qualify. You need to decide whether or not you really need. You need to get in contact with the people who can do the proper assessment to decide whether or not you get it or not, rather than sitting and saying there's something wrong with the government simply because Mr. Kirk Tibbetts might think so, or because Mr. Alden McLaughlin might think so. You have to realize that their fortunes are safe. They have the economic wherewithal to be able to live in nice homes. They have it to be able to send their children to nice schools. Their children, look at the standard that their children live at and exist at. So what I'm saying is, nothing wrong with the standards which they've been able to create for themselves, but then they should not prevent you from getting certain types of benefits that the government is willing and able at this particular time to pass on to you, the electorate. Now, we have had a lot of criticism from the People's Progressive Movement with regards to our housing project, not directly from the leader himself, but for people who we know are big supporters. Because the People Progressive Movement used the People's for a Referendum movement in order to create the numbers which they now have in their political parties. So that whole issue about referendum, all that did was to create membership for their party. And so they have people like Mr. Tom Aborton who have criticized this project and who continues to criticize this project. But the point is, what has this gentleman done with regards to building of affordable houses for low and very low income persons? What has he done as a member of the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that we have wages in this country that can allow you, therefore, to purchase houses that he would be able to bring on the market? The government has said that we do not bar anyone from being able to participate in the supply of houses to the people who are in need of housing, because the market is there. Right now, today, as it stands, we have over 450 people that have already registered saying that they're interested in these houses and that they're in need of these houses. And there are many more that will continue to register as the days and weeks go by, and as people come to a point that they see that these houses are of good quality, that they're safe housing, and that they're long lasting, and that there's something that will give them the kind of shelter and comfort that they so badly need, that will give their families the space This is something that I am doing, spearheading. This is something that my government is supporting me doing. This is something that we need to get involved as a community to support and back. You need to back me with the housing thing, because believe it or not, I'm coming under a lot of pressure from those people who have only thought about themselves. Those same people that are members of the People's Progressive Movement today that are hiding under the popularity and friendship of Mr. Kirk Tibbetts. Do not be fooled by the fact that people will come to funerals and make sermons and pretend somehow that they have the care of the entire community together. But when it comes to life, that what we get in this life is only what they can hand out to us and not what we can get through our labors. We believe that affordable housing is not giving people something, it is making something available to them that is affordable, and therefore they can have the pride of ownership because they have accomplished the ownership of a house by themselves and not because somebody has given it to them. It brings me to this whole point of funerals. It's the reason why, honestly, I do not always frequent funerals, because I do believe that a funeral is a time that is a sad time where people need to mourn, where people need to grieve for the deceased, where it is a personal thing, and it should not be politicized, where we go to the funerals and we see that there are only People's Progressive members there or only United Democratic Party members here, where we begin to understand that people are using the funerals for political purposes. It's a shame the way people are using funerals and pretending at funerals and preaching sermons at funerals when we have preachers to do exactly that. I believe that the role of politicians in funerals should be limited. My God, when we see middle-class people having funerals, we never see politicians there. We see their friends there. We see their family there. We see nephews and nieces on the platform giving tributes and talking about how they felt about the deceased, how they loved the deceased, the contributions that the deceased meant. We don't have politicians putting themselves up somehow as extraordinary, supernatural, taking advantage of that psychological weakness that people have at that particular time. They need to look at the tradition, where this tradition has come from. Why is it that certain class of people don't put politicians on the pulpit when they're having funerals, and why another class of people are taken advantage of simply because the politicians are there as soon as they hear that somebody's dead, not just to show concern, but because they want to play a role in the funeral. I am not that type of person. I am sorry. I feel too close. So if I am not doing my job, because I'm not doing that type of manipulation, then it is never possible for me to do the job. When I come and say to somebody, I feel grieved, I feel saddened by the death, I mean that. I have to deal with death. I've had to deal with it just this year in my family. But I know it is something that is extraordinary. It is extraordinary. It's not something that I want people to invade and interrupt. I believe I need to have my space, my personal space, when it comes to the issue of death. I have no solutions to people when it comes to death. That should come from their preachers, not from their politicians. Politicians have to watch how they take advantage of poor people in order to set up themselves to have psychological control in order to direct them in a particular way. I want you to be aware of these things. Like I said before, when I came back to this country in 1977, I came to help. I was misunderstood. I was called a radical. I was pushed apart. I've gotten an opportunity now, and regardless of what Kirk Tibbetts or Alden McLaughlin or Lucille Seymour or any of those people say, I will spend the next 2 years doing the best that I can do for the people. And at that time, if I have no more time in government, then that is fine, because I would have done so much that none of them will come back in 4 years or 8 years and even come anywhere near what I have achieved. That is the reason why in less than a year there, I've been able to do the achievements that I've done. I've put the housing issue in this country on the table again, where now contractors are coming to me to say they can do it at a cheaper price. Why didn't they do it before? And I'm happy now that they've come to the point to say we can now do it at the price that you're doing it, or a close price that you're doing it at, if government gets involved and government gives us some subsidy. Hallelujah. That's what we want. We want the resources of the country to be distributed to the people in such a way that the people will benefit, in such a way that the people's standard of living will improve, that their lives will improve, and they will not have to wait until they're dead and to have any joy and any happiness. Whatever it is that we can give the people, we need to give the people while the people are alive, and not at tributes when they're dead. So many people that are denied the necessities of life by the very people that pay tributes at their funerals. We want to be serious about the whole issue of what government is. Government is about the distribution of resources, and I am saying that the United Democratic Party is a government that is interested in making sure that the poorer, more disadvantaged people in the society now begin to benefit in ways that they've never benefited before, that they are not going to benefit from if they have the People's Progressive Movement in power, because that progressive movement disguises itself as if it's a popular movement interested in the people, but it's controlled by a minority of people in this country that have always controlled this country. And this is the reason why in November of 2000, when we were going to form a government with Mr. Kirk Tibbetts, that a few people were able to go to him and say that they did not want me in the government, and that he was therefore willing to go to form a government with Mr. McKeever Bush in West Bay, because a few people controls what he does, although he pretends to you as if he is the man of the people. He is the man of the people. He is friendly. He finds himself in bars. He's this, he's that. I wouldn't deny that. But when it comes to making decisions, he's making a lot of those decisions because of the same class of people in this country that have always had the say. I'm saying, whether or not they like it or not, this is a time for the poorer people in the community. This is a time when people like in the East End that are poor can get some attention. This is a time when people who never made it up to the 4th floor in a glass house to do business can get up to the 4th floor in a glass house and do business. This is a time of a social revolution where the social relationships can change. Do not remain dependent upon people's approval of you. Get to the point now where your approval of them is also important. The challenge is, at the end of the day, to the people's progressive movement, because we understand that a people's movement is a movement for the people, by the people. That progressive means that they're forward thinking, that they're inclusive in their thinking, not exclusive, that they represent more the masses than the elite. But that's what they have put on their label. That's what they're calling it, branding themselves as being. But at the end of the day, they represent the masses when they begin to distribute the resources of the country in such a way that they impact the masses positively. If you look at this government's relationship with scholarships, the number of scholarships have increased, not just for the rich, not just for the well-educated, but also for those people who are at community college. Also for those people who are at an age now where they're going back to college and they have a few kids. That's what's important. If you look at the people who are on the boards and who are controlling the boards in this country, it's not that small elite anymore. And if you want to get involved with the boards, let us know. If you want to get involved with the United Democratic Party, let us know. We didn't go around to try to create a membership. We didn't have a fantastic membership drive, not because we wanted to exclude people. That was not the case. The point was that we became a party because the government had broken down and that there was a need to have more cohesive leadership so that the whole bottom did not fall out because of the kinds of problems which Mr. Kirk Tibbetts introduced to government from 2000 in November, when he failed to produce a government out of the relationship he had with myself, Mr. Gilbert McLean, and so forth and so on. And he failed to maintain the relationship that he had with the West Bayers that he ran to. So this whole situation was broken down. We did not want to go into that relationship with the West Bayers and have it broken down over our heads. We realized that there would have to be guidelines, that there would have to be structure if we were going to succeed as a government for longer than a few months, which most people thought we wouldn't succeed for any more than a few months. So the fact that we organized ourselves in order to be able to accomplish our job is not a negative thing. But they sat around and they talked about how bad parties are for the country. Yet they came out and they started their party. And they use confrontational issues to build their membership and to put people against their government. They're the ones now who are calling themselves a movement, but a movement is a party. A movement they have a constitution, they have a structure, they have a leadership. That's all a party, but they're telling you that they're a movement, not a party, because they still believe that people are so stupid that they can tell them this foolishness and people will believe it. A movement is a party. In the Bahamas, you have you have one party called a movement. It's called a movement. In Grenada, you have the New Jewels movement. That was a radical movement in Grenada, but certainly it's a party. It has discipline. It has membership. What else is a party but a political organization that has a membership, that has a constitution, that has a leadership structure? That is a party. The People's Progressive Movement is a party. That is exactly what it is. It does not have to have the word party on there for it to be a party. Don't be fooled by the semantics. They know they're a party. They're organized as a party. They have accepted that party politics is a part of the kind of politics that we have in the Cayman Islands at the moment. Otherwise, they would not have invited this Dr. Gonzalez from St. Vincent and the Grenadine to come to address you with regards to why a party system is the appropriate system for us to be having at the particular time. But they built a lot of negatives against us because we had organized a party in order to take the government out of the disaster that Mr. Kirk Tibbetts had put it in. Now, the truth of the matter is that I understand that he's very strong in Georgetown. I understand that he's very popular. But the question is, did he deliver anything in the amount of time that he had? And what have I delivered in the amount of time that I've had, which is less time than he had between 2000 and 2001, November 2000 and 2001. What did he deliver to the Georgetown people between November 2000 and November 2001, and what have I delivered, and what am I going to be able to deliver by that same time or a little time after? And he was the leader of government business. He was the popular person. I am the person who comes from the grassroots, who's not always the most acceptable. But I can tell you one thing, I can think my way out of a paper bag, and I know who I belong to, and I know who I'm there to serve, and I'm going to do my best to be able to accomplish my mission in 2 more years. So if he, with his popularity, can fool people to tell people that what is important is how he liked them and how they like him, rather than what he can do for them. Because although he might even want to do it, he is not going to be able to do it simply because the class of people that control his party, that you might not even see. He got a whole lot of grassroots people lined up there, but behind the party is that same business machinery that has always controlled this country, that have always put the cow out there and say it's only after you vote for us that you can butcher it. It's that same group of people that have always said, well, we pay for your funeral, but we got to be up on the political platform so that we can talk and be seen to be important. No, 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 no. There's a time for change. There is a time for change in this country. The United Democratic Party, the Georgetown branch of the United Democratic Party is bringing change. We're visiting the communities. We're talking to people with regards to what it is that you see as needs. Be out there to the meeting. The next meeting is in the Windsor Park area. Be out there and tell a politician what it is that you want, because now we're not in the position to have to promise you. We're in a position to deliver to you. That is a very important thing. Do not spend the next 2 years waiting for the deliverer to come. There is the possibility to have what you want delivered at this particular point. Focus on your government. Support your government. Support the United Democratic Party, because it is the party that is the party of the people. And when you look at the people who are members of the United Democratic Party, who are members of government, they are all people who are people's people. So the fact that we might not have the same time as Mr. Kirk Tibbetts now, who has basically nothing else to do but his politics. The fact that we have somehow swapped sides, because remember, between November 2000 and November 2001, people were saying, well, we couldn't see him anyway because he was busy too. So because he has time does not necessarily mean that he will be able to use that time to deliver to you what it is that you need to be delivered to you in time. We believe, the members of United Democratic Party believe, I sincerely believe, that the District of Georgetown needs to wake up and to take the issues that they have to the government and to rely upon the government and believe that the government will sincerely look at the issues and do something to resolve the problem. If you watch Public Eye, tell other people about Public Eye. Tell other people Public Eye has been going for the last many years, at least from 1997. They should watch it. They should watch it, and they should encourage other people to watch it. It is a way that we try to get our message out to the people. We hope that you have enjoyed this Public Eye, and whatever reaction that you can give us with telephone calls or letters or whatever, please do. Let us know about the job that we're doing. Let us know about your needs. That's all, and good night from Public Eye.
Public Eye has been brought to you by the New Vision Movement.